Three, two, one.
Biz Buds.
You're listening to Biz Buds. Super authentic, actionable advice.
We're gonna open the kimono and show you what's inside.
I'm scared to see inside Mike's kimono.
Hey, it's Mike and Tom with Biz Buds.
If you like geeking out over business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you.
Hello, all you Biz Buddies. Welcome back to the Biz Buds podcast. This is episode number 36, where I'm here with my man-child of a friend, Mr. Tom Ross, coming at you live from London, England. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I significantly prefer your voice like that. That is radio vibes all day long.
This is actually my normal voice, how I usually talk, but I kind of dumb it down for this podcast just for you so that you kind of seem more on brand with the podcast in general.
It's too smooth, like butter. I feel very abrasive by comparison.
Well, that goes without saying. I think that all the Biz Bud podcast listeners would agree that Tom is a bit
abrasive character.
Off kilter. So today we're going to be talking about managing clients. Okay,
it gets a bit eerie after like a minute. Actually, I changed my mind.
If we do things right, by the end of this podcast, you're going to love your clients. You're going to work with your clients well. You're going to be happy. You're going to love your job again. We're going to let Tom kick us off with a few thoughts to get us started. Tom, I'll turn the time over to you.
You're too kind, Michael. So first of all, to give a bit of context, I was saying to Mike just before we hit record, we're getting another little mini heat wave here in the UK. And recently, I've been on this health kick. So I got a little ergonomic chair. Do you know the ones I mean? Where there's no back to it and your legs kind of fold like a pretzel around this thing.
You kneel on it, kind
I'm
of?
kneeling right now. Unbelievably sweaty shins.
Yes.
Right now. So it's like, it's fake leather, but my shins are like sticking in the heat to this thing.
Yes.
I'm regretting it right
I
now.
had noticed in a few of your videos that you had super sweaty shins, but I never said anything because I didn't want you to get a complex. But
it's actually the only place I sweat from.
Exactly. Anytime I see you in pants and it's always like wet shins, I'm like, man, that dude has a serious shin sweat problem.
I only sweat
but
from
I'm glad that
down.
you're opening up about it in this podcast.
All right, managing clients. I think this is a big topic. Mike, you've done entire books, courses, and everything else when it comes to this. And we have talked before about managing relationships, and obviously some of that episode, I think that was episode 3, naturally will feed into this one. But today we go deep. And my thoughts when it comes to managing clients, I got to lead with empathy, to be honest. I really, really, really dislike a lot of the narrative in the design space around clients are wrong, clients are evil, they're not to be trusted, they're the enemy, you're at odds. I think as soon as you start seeing it as more of a collaborative process and deploying extreme amounts of empathy, it's only going to benefit you. So how do we make that actionable? Well, try thinking more like a client is simply it. And I find this really interesting because recently and actually right now, I'm getting some design work done. So I've been the client. And nothing makes you more empathetic than switching sides, because you can start to understand like what are some of the concerns and the unknowns and areas that are going to cause a degree of reticence in the client, and where does communication fall a bit flat for you. And then you jump back over to the other side and you get exactly the same thing as the designer. So I know it's all meme-worthy content, and I know designers love to post all these carousels about like, here's like the signs that your client's, a complete nightmare. I know that's entertaining content, but I think when that becomes the primary narrative, it can be a little bit destructive. What do you think about that, Mike?
I think that's great. I've done a handful of posts in that vein. I think my rebuttal to that is that there are bad clients out there, and most of the posts that I do in that vein are here's the ones to watch out for. These are the red flags that are not going to go away even if you manage the client better. Some clients are out there to try to, squeeze every little morsel they can out of you for the lowest amount of money and make your life miserable. Some clients are out there to not pay you at all. They intend to hose you on the project, and you have to watch out for some of these types of clients. But most of the time, a bad client experience is mostly the fault of the seller of the service, not the client. And it would go to the point that I have. One of my first points is this effort to constantly educate your client about what this process is going to be, what comes next, when they will see things. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that as we get going. But there's something that I want to talk about off of what you were saying with empathy. It's all about understanding what the client wants. So why don't we talk for a minute, Tom, about what does the client want? What does the client want?
Yeah.
Did you just write that down on your piece of paper?
No, I didn't, but I got a good follow-up point.
Okay, good. So let's make a list of here's what the headspace is of your client for this project that you're going to engage in. Whatever it might be, from construction at a house to design services and whatever it might be.
The interesting thing? I bet most designers have never sat down and done this exercise we're about to do.
Good.
And isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So let's talk it.
All right. The client, what do they want? They want confidence in the quality, because you don't always know what you're going to get. It's not when you go buy a car, you know what to expect. You know the spec, you know the horsepower. Your buddy has the same car. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what it's going to be like. It's a widget. So with design, there's always an inherent fear. What if I don't like the end result? Mm-hmm. Am I going to be in a difficult spot? Am I going to have to pay for something I don't like? Am I going to have to kind of just keep quiet and put up with it, but it's not going to quite sit right with me, or I won't be 100% happy?
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. So you use the word confidence. I like to use the word trust. And this is a large measure on why a client makes a buying decision in the first place, is because they trust you. Whoever's doing this design work for you, you decided to choose them because you trust that they're going to deliver the quality you want. They're going to keep their promises. They're going to keep their price. You have a relationship with them of trust. And that's at the heart of almost any purchase decision that we make, unless you're going to the dollar store or Walmart where you're going to purchase something because it's the low price guarantee. But outside of that, most purchase decisions have a huge measure of trust related to the reason why a client buys something, or why any consumer buys something. So I like that one as the first one. Another thing that I'll say, so that's point number one on what clients want. Point number two, they want a return on investment. Most of the work that they hire you to do, they want some return on their investment. And it's not always a financial return. It's not always that if they spend $20, they get $30 of value in return. Sometimes we spend $20 because we get $100 worth of emotional benefit out of it. We feel better about our brand. We feel better about our house. We feel better about whatever. And that's the return on investment. But they want some kind of return on their investment. And I think that's so important to establish at the start for you mentally, when you're sitting there with a client, to say to yourself, what is the return that they want on this thing? Because that's what I need to be talking about during the progress of this project. I've got to be talking to them, helping them see that what we're doing is going to deliver the return that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. I've written value down as a kind of one word.
Okay.
For that return on investment.
And how do you define value, Tom?
Well, I think you kind of just summed it up. It could be financial ROI. It could be emotional ROI. That could include the alleviation of stress in your business. They build something because it's just perpetually weighing on your mind, and now it's sorted. It might not be financial, but that has a lot of value.
I would put that as a whole separate one, stress relief.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole separate point in itself, that sometimes people buy from you because they want to hand you the ball, or it's that hot potato game. A lot of people, entrepreneurs, they're holding the hot potato. You do play this game in the UK?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. I didn't know if you guys were way too posh.
Called the boiled spud here. No.
Yeah, the boiled spud. Okay, so they're passing the boiled spud from one person to the next while the music's playing, and whoever's stuck holding the boiled spud is the loser. And a lot of times a client is buying from you because they want that stress relief. Oh no, I'm holding this hot potato. I want to get this passed off to somebody else. And that, I've seen that so much. Made a lot of money off of people handing me their hot potato, and then they can say, oh, I got that off. So stress relief, I think, is a whole separate one, but keep going.
Awesome. The next one I've got is enjoyment. Are they actually going to enjoy the process, or is it going to be painful? Are they going to like working with you? Is it going to be a pleasant experience? Are they going to feel comfortable communicating with you, dealing with you, or is it going to be horrible, like pulling teeth?
Yeah. I had that same one, but I called it customer experience. They want a good customer experience. And I think that's worth us digging deeper on that later on in this episode, on how do we provide that good customer experience, because that goes at the heart of managing clients in general. Okay, so let's talk more about that. My next one on what does a client want? They want you to hit your deadlines, fulfill commitments. If you tell them that it's going to be done by Friday, they want you to have it done by Friday. Yep. Now, this goes with customer experience and things, but I think it's important enough to spin it off as its own point. They want you to fulfill your side of this agreement. You got any more on what a client wants, Tom?
I think those are a lot of the big ones from my perspective. I'm actually talking to a developer tomorrow to potentially build out my personal brand site. And so I'm having a lot of these thoughts right now because I don't really know them. They just reached out to me on Instagram. And so there's a lot of my primary concerns are, well, they seem nice, but can I trust them? Is their work going to be legit? Are they going to deliver? What are they going to be like to deal with?
Yeah.
And I actually got a bunch of their portfolio pieces and I passed it by my dev team at my company to sanity check how good their code is, to help give me trust, because I'm not in a position to judge that. And I think most people hiring a creative, they don't have the skill set to really know how good it is.
Right.
So it's even for me, it's a big thing to try and establish that.
Yeah. So as the vendor, let's talk about this for maybe the balance of of this episode. As the vendor, what should this person do to help you feel that trust, to help you know that you're going to hit the deadlines, that they're going to deliver on the quality, that they're going to deliver the ROI that you're looking for? What does the designer, since we talk to a lot of designers, but what in any situation, what does the vendor need to do to help the client feel at peace with this engagement?
Well, in my mind, it splits into really two phases. So you've got the pre-engagement, pre-sale, and then you've got the post-sale or engagement, i.e. while the project's actually happening. And both are very important and are intrinsically linked together, because before you agree to sign up and pay them and begin the project, they still have to begin managing you as the client. And I've got a bold note in front of me that says manage expectations up front. Mm-hmm. I think that's so enormous. And this is the bulk of where people listening will have gone wrong in the past. It's that they don't establish usually, or they mismanage expectations from day one. And so then when problems rear their head later on, they're backpedaling, they're trying to, undo confusion, or there's, they haven't seen eye to eye with the client. So the expectations are very different on both sides because you didn't talk about it openly enough, all that kind of stuff. And that's where 99% of the headaches come from. It's actually, if you rewinded back to day one before you even started the project, you can actually mitigate and avoid these things.
Yeah, I have a chapter in Burn Your Portfolio that says most projects blow up because, and the answer to that is because you didn't do a good job of defining the scope of the project at the start. Most projects blow up because you blew it up before you even started. So how do we have this not happen? It's all about a super uber detailed scope of work. Clearly defining, here is exactly what we're going to do. Here's exactly what you're going to get. Here's exactly what it's going to cost. And everybody knows that at the start of the engagement. And then it isn't you who manages the client. It's the scope that manages the client. The entire project is managed by the defined scope that you both agreed to at the start. And this is where a lot of creatives especially fail. And one of the reasons that my agency succeeded when we started doing huge projects, $500,000 projects, you've got to have an uber detailed scope of work or you're screwed in 5 months. You're hemorrhaging money on a job like that.
Almost think like legal document. So
it
I'm
is
buying
a
my
legal
first
document.
house right now. Obviously, we're getting an incredibly detailed itinerary of what is and isn't included, where the boundaries of the property are, all that kind of stuff. Think in those terms. I'm not saying you need to use a bunch of legalese, confusing language. It should actually be the opposite. It should be very clear and straightforward, but it needs to be thorough and it needs to be there in black and white in writing.
Yeah. In my course, not to tout my course, but in my course, I give away all my contracts that I used, and it's clear. Here is the phase of the project. Here are every single round and what happens in the round of the project. Here's another phase of the project and what happens in that round, in each round of that project phase. And it's bulletproof as you can get in a creative scope.
Yeah.
And then that's what manages the client. It's not you. It's you and the client saying, yes, we agree to this. And then you just fulfilling what's on your side and the client fulfills what's on their side and everybody's happy in the end. And so this is, I think, at the heart, and I had this as one of the main things. What manages the client? It's not human to human management most of the time. It's agreement, scope agreement, and that's what manages both of you.
Yep. And all it takes is open communication, actually documenting it, and then getting clear buy-in from both sides. And this is such a transferable lesson to all kinds of elements of business. So I do this with all kinds of parts of my company, with hiring, for example. The level of open transparency, even at interview phase, is ridiculous. We're hiring right now. At interview phase, I'm having conversations with them about how their 1-year review would look. Mm-hmm. And how we might structure future pay rises, etc. Because what I've learned is otherwise you hire someone and at their annual review, they're like, oh, this isn't quite what I expected, or I had this different at my last job. Yeah. So I get it all out in the open from day one before we even hire the person.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. The more you put up front, the safer you're going to be. And same thing with people's job descriptions. Same thing, we've got like a company handbook we've been working on that has all kinds of internal policies. So when you produce this kind of written material and then you explain it and sell it to the client or the staff or whatever it might be, and you get their buy-in and they say, yes, sounds good to me, sign on the dotted line, sign me up, that's for me, then it's recorded proof. So in 5 months when they're trying to scope creep, and say, oh, can you just slip a couple more pages in? You're like, but you signed this. You agreed to this. You said there was going to be 8 pages and now you want 10. That's not what we agreed. In fact, we even had that conversation in writing here. What would happen if you did want more pages? That we could do it, but at this rate. And you agreed to that too, remember? Mm-hmm. And I do this, with my team. It's like, okay, well, this is your job description. So the fact you're over there trying to do that other thing that you shouldn't be, that's not there. That's that other person's job description in their black and white writing. This is yours. And let's discuss, this is the focus that you bought into. It's so powerful because otherwise it just becomes kind of memory. And that's dangerous.
Yeah,
it's
dangerous.
I remember that differently than you do.
And assumption is just super dangerous too. And you know what? It's better for the client and it's better for your employees to have this kind of structure, because then when they see this thing that they feel like, oh, maybe I should go and work on that, they have a better tendency to say, wait a second, no, I need to be focusing on my responsibilities. I know that Sally is working on that. That's part of Sally's job description, and she's working on it. I don't have to go and butt into that. And it's just better for them too, because they can go home at night knowing that Sally's on that problem, and they can shelf it for them. They don't have to worry about it because somebody else has that responsibility. It's the same thing in the scope of the work. If you define it at the start clearly and bulletproof with the client, then the client knows exactly what this project flow is going to be. They know exactly what their deliverables are going to be. They know exactly what comes next in the flow of the project, and they're not sitting there saying to themselves, oh man, I sure hope that Joe remembers to code this or that, or I sure hope that Joe remembers that we needed business cards too, along with our logo design. They won't be thinking that stuff because they know that it's already in the agreement, and you're both following that agreement that you define at the start.
And it becomes so easy and obvious to identify if something goes wrong. Why? Because you're not just holding the client accountable so that they can't mess you around. You're holding yourself accountable. And you should be, because that's going to imbue the client with much more confidence, because it's in writing too. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to deliver on these dates. Here's how it's all going to work. It's all laid out there. And that's good, I think, because as creatives, we can equally bounce around and get a bit lost in a project if it's not clearly defined from our side. So it's great to be held to your own account.
Yeah. Okay, so this kind of merges into the next piece of this for me. The scope that you define at the start is what manages the client, and it manages you. The next thing that manages the client and manages you is your defined systematic process of execution. It's that this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Exactly what you do every single time to execute on this type of project. And you define that, you show it to the client. So here's the flow. You'd get this scope document defined and agreed to. It's a statement of work or a contract, however you want to define it in your business. You get the client to sign that, and then you kick off the meeting together with the client and you show them your internal systems. And your internal systems should be a set of task lists that you will follow to execute on this project. You tell the client, okay, as you know, in our agreement, we had phase 1. We're going to do some strategy work here. We're going to have a kickoff meeting or a strategy meeting on X date. And then we're going to give you the strategy document on Y date. And then we're going to get your approval on the strategy document by Z date. And then we'll be completed with phase 1. And you teach the client, here's the flow and what's going to happen in your project. And after you approve the strategy document, we're going to go into the design phase, where we go and do step 1, step 2, step 3,
so they know
step
exactly
4.
where they're at.
They know
phase.
exactly where they're at. And you walk them through it. And then the client walks away from that meeting. You're so on the same page, and they know you have the ball. This is at the heart of what they want. They want confidence and trust. Tom, you're going to hire a developer to build your personal brand website. If that developer is smart, they're going to walk you through that process in a kickoff meeting so that you know.
That's what we got tomorrow.
Yeah, good. So that you know that they have the boiled spud, and that's it. They're holding it now, and you can say, okay, good. They have it. I don't need to worry about that. I know exactly what's going to come. And then the matter of managing clients becomes 2 things. It's the agreement that you signed with the client at the start, And then it's holding yourself accountable to the step-by-step process that you laid out to execute on this project. And then it's just an education and reminder game. It's just telling the client every time you deliver on step 4, you tell them, now as a reminder, step 5 and 6 are coming, and here's what those are. Just wanted to remind you of what's coming next. And then the client at the end of step 4 says, okay, good, I know what's coming. I know they still have the boiled spud. I don't need to worry about it.
And just note how much more assertive and confident and professional this makes you sound. Because if you and the client are doing a dance, you're leading, right?
Yeah.
They're following your lead. You're saying, here's where we go next. And they say, yes,
Yeah.
okay, Mr. Expert.
Yeah. And what do you get when you are the expert in the room? You get the ability to charge more money. And you're not haphazard. You're not willy-nilly. You can charge more money to your clients. And so structure, organization, it's better for the customer experience. It embodies this trust that we want the client to have with us. And as a result of that trust, we can charge them more money for our services than somebody else.
I love it.
I love
I
it.
haven't said that in a while.
I love it.
I know we're still going here, but we're halfway through or whatever. I feel like this is going to be a helpful episode for people. Like I feel like we can't hammer the point home enough to actually have the structure and have the due diligence and have the upfront work. My nightmare is the people that are jumping in. Hey, you need a logo? Cool, I'll do you a logo. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Send me 50%. Cool, I'll go talk to you in a while. And here's your logo. I hope you like it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the process for so many people. And
it is.
It's so funny. Like I keep mentioning, we're getting this house at the minute. And there's so many parallels in terms of things I actually like about how they've done it. Because we got this paperwork where it was like, here's all the kind of more complex industry terms broken down in layman's terms, so we could understand what they all meant. And then here is an 8-phase process with bullet points in each step of how the entire thing is going to progress. And so literally as each part happens and they update us, we check it off on this printout. So we know exactly where we're at in the process right now. And we can see ahead exactly what's left. Like if we didn't have that, it would just be this black box of panic right now. Because I'd be like, I have no idea how far along. Like, are we on track? I just don't know. Whereas I'm like, cool, check. Like it's so calming.
Yeah. There's a great book called the Checklist Manifesto. And I'm so bought into this concept even before that book, but it was just making systematic checklists of how you execute on every type of project. And it's so much better, not just for the client experience, but for your own internal experience. I would always tell my team at my agency, look, the system that we put in place is what manages us here. It's what makes it so that we can focus all our energy on creating the custom thing that we're creating for the client, so that we don't have to create a custom system every single time that we're creating the custom thing. And there are way too many creatives out there that are creating a new custom system on how they're going to execute on it. They're putting their creative energy into that instead of focusing all their creative energy on creating the thing, because they're too worried about their system and process every single time. It's like they're reinventing the wheel every time that they work.
Literally about to say those exact words. Like it's so true. And don't underestimate, like that work is not the most fun. Yeah. I mean, maybe it is for some people, but for me, like systems and processes, I get off on the results.
Yeah.
And what it does for me. So now, I'm all in, I'm sold on this. We do it all the time. But the fulfilling bit for me is cool. That's in place now. And now we can just run and we can run within the parameters of the system. So this episode is all about client management. I guess what we're saying is this is really the systems are managing the client. Yeah. And you're just operating within them.
Yeah. The systems manage the client. The systems manage you. everybody is beholden to the system and the process. And if you can make that happen in your business, then everybody is so much happier. The system becomes the bad guy too. And this is the great thing. When something goes wrong, you and the client knew the system, and you can look at it and say, wait a second, something went wrong in this project. What did we miss in the system? Oh, we didn't scope that element at the start. It was out of scope. And look, it blew up the whole project. Maybe if we would have stuck to the scope system that we created, it wouldn't have blown up. Or you go through the process of your internal systems, your step 1, step 2, step 3, and then step 9 blows up, and you look at it and you say, wait a second, what did we miss in our system that made this blow up? We missed step 8.5, which wasn't even listed here. If we would have done step 8.5, then this wouldn't have happened in step 9. Let's add a new step to this process so that this never happens again. So all the future clients can be happy without this same problem emerging.
Precisely. And that's a great point, because most people, they're not going to just knock up the perfect system overnight.
Yeah.
So
mine took years at my agency, years
it's
to
iterative, right?
Evolve. Yeah.
So you do it once, and it gets you in the right direction. And that's all we're trying to get people to do listening to this episode. At least start putting these things in place. Recognize they're not going to be perfect, and don't beat yourself up if they break a little, but then fix the part that broke, and it shouldn't break again. And then another part breaks for a different project, and then go and fix that. And before you know it, every project gets a bit smoother and a bit smoother and a bit easier.
Yeah. And a bit more profitable. And in the end, what does the vendor want? They want a good customer experience and a good profitable project. And if we're lucky, we want a portfolio piece out of it that we can show off to other people. But that's in the end what the vendor wants in a lot of these situations. Okay,
how terrifying it is when you lose the system, by the way? Like when you get used to working within a system, it feels like the Wild West if you don't have one.
Yeah.
I just helped one of my coaching students set up a better system and process for hiring and interviewing people, because stuff was going wrong and hires weren't really working out. So I tweaked a few parameters. I shared some of our hiring system and let her use it. And now she's got a process where she just drops potential candidates in, and then they work their way through it. And unsuitable candidates will naturally be filtered out and drop off at various phases as the system is designed to achieve. And it's the same thing for clients. You feel like you're like, oh, cool. Here's a nice potential client I hit it off with. I'm just going to drop them in the system.
Yeah.
And it's just going to take care of it.
Yeah.
So nice.
It is so nice. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of systems. We talked about what clients want in this engagement. Now let's talk about some of the pieces of actually managing the client. Because yes, there is human to human interaction that has to happen in managing the client and holding yourself and the client to the system and the scope and the detail that you've defined at the start. So one of the things that I would talk about, we've mentioned the word communication a handful of times in this podcast already, but it's this never wanting, I have a chapter in Burn Your Portfolio about this too. It's you never want your client to wait, worry, or wonder. It's the WWW. You never want them to be waiting on you. So waiting on you, you promised it on Friday. You're not delivering on Friday till like 8 p.m. Well, from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m., the client is sitting around waiting on you because they would have expected it during normal business days. Or you just decide, I'm just going to deliver it on Monday, and you don't tell the client now that you got them waiting on you. So you want to avoid them waiting on you. Hit those deadlines that you commit to. You never want them to be worrying. Does Tom have the boiled spud? You don't want them to be worrying about whether you have it or not. And so you kind of got to get in the mind of the client. You mentioned this at the very, very start, empathy. You got to get in the mind of the client and say to yourself, all right, it's been about 3 days since I checked in with this client again. We haven't had a deliverable. We don't have a deliverable until next Tuesday. But if I was the client, I'd probably be worrying a little bit because I haven't heard from them. So I'm going to send them a friendly check-in. And I did this all the time. It was this little email that says, hey, just wanted you to know, I just walked by Christian's desk and he's working on your logos and they were looking awesome. I'm so excited. The delivery's next Tuesday. They were looking super good. I would send those kinds of messages to my clients even when I wasn't the one designing anything anymore. I was just part of that client liaison with my company, and those friendly check-ins eliminated worry. The client would then say, oh, okay, sweet. I can't wait to see him. You change their worry into excitement about what's coming next, and they know that you still have the boiled spud. And then the last one on the WWW is the wonder. You never want them to wonder if you even know what you're doing. And this just hammers home defining the scope at the start and the step-by-step process that you walk them through on how you're going to execute on this. That eliminates the wonder of whether you even know what you're doing and if this is even going to turn out successful. So the WWW kind of is at the heart of getting in the mind of the client and touching base with them in the right ways.
It's so good. And I don't want us to underplay the human element of this, because if it was all CRMs and systems and processes, it would be like doing business with a robot, right? Mm-hmm. You are at 5.5 in the process. Like, that's not very fun. So again, I would refer back to the relationship marketing episode we did. And there's a reason why stuff like client lunches, which are Mike's favorite, works so well. And all the best people that I've dealt with in life, not just for design projects, but all kinds of projects and stuff where I've been the client, is when the first 10 minutes of the phone call are like, how's the family, having a nice chat, and the human side. And then they assertively and confidently are like, cool, so just to update you, here's where we're at. Everything's on track, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. But you can't just be about the business, I don't think.
Yeah, totally. All right, so I have another point that I want to talk about on this. And we've mentioned this in the being this systematic, process-oriented, defining the scope, and how that allows you to charge more money to your clients. Now, here's the thing that everybody probably knows or understands, and if you don't, I'm going to say it boldly. The less you charge, the worse clients you're going to attract. The clients that pay cheap have a higher likelihood of being a bad client than the clients who pay more.
Isn't it so ironic? As you get more lucrative clients, the issues tend to drop off.
They do. They know how to be a client. Cheap priced clients don't know how to be a client. High paying clients typically know how to be a client more effectively. So a little shout out to upping your prices. Now, you can't just up your prices and still operate in this organic, willy-nilly way that is too freelancery, loose. You've got to start defining these systems and processes in this methodical way of working so that you can create trust. And then the more the client trusts you, the happier they will be to pay a higher rate for you. And you will actually attract clients who pay bigger money for the same services you're doing for cheaper clients now, but you'll attract them because you're so systematic, methodical, organized, professional, that you will embody this word trust, and they will actually pay you more money for what you're doing. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or putting the cart before the horse, or whatever metaphor we want to use? You've got to start now, even when you're small, being uber systematic and process oriented, and then know that, and some of you out there are probably thinking, well, that's way too complex for my clients. My clients, they don't want an 8-page contract for a logo design. Well, okay, then keep charging $200 for logos and keep sending them a 1-page proposal, and then you're going to have $200 logo clients forever. or change now and start sending 8-page contracts to your $200 logo clients, and know that that shift is going to start attracting better clients to you because you're starting to operate in a bigger and better way at your business.
Yeah, like when James Martin did my logo recently, we had the conversations before the project even started, like how many revisions would I get? What would happen if I didn't like the first one or whatever? And that ended up playing out because I think it was revision number 3 that he crushed, and the other 2 were great, but that ended up being the one. But that was fine because we weren't panicking because we'd had the conversation as part of the initial.
Because you knew that there was going to be a third revision. Man, on revision number 1 or on version 1, whenever I would sit with a client, the first thing I would say before I even present the work, I would show them the rounds that we have in the contract. And I would say, okay, now just keep in mind, this is round 1. And we have 3 rounds of design coming up. And it's rare that we hit the nail on the head in round 1. But I just want you to know we're just trying to establish the right direction and get some talking points right here. So that's what round 1 is all about. You're not going to see your final logo in this batch. But we're going to show you this, then we're going to take your feedback, then we're going to do round 2, and then we're going to do round 3. And then the client sits back. So I'm educating the client and prepping them for the delivery. And then the client sits back and says, oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay, yeah, if I don't like these, I know we get feedback and I know I'll get to see another version. Instead, without that education, then you start showing the logos, and at the end you say to the client, okay, so what do you think? And the client's pissed because they hoped to see their final logo in round 1, and you didn't educate them that it wasn't going to be there in the first place. So it shifts the conversation to be right, but it's all about educating the client, helping them understand what the purpose of this round is going to be. And so I'm sure James did a great job with you on that, and you knew that there were going to be 3 rounds of the revision, so you didn't have to get mad that round 1 didn't hit the nail on the head.
Is it fair to say that within good client management, the client should think less? Because
sure.
I think the more you're putting on them, where they're like, oh, I got to figure this out. I feel on the spot.
Yeah.
I got to work out where we go next. That's where they bounce around and get stressed out. But all the words we're using in this episode are like, we're managing the client. We're leading the client. We're educating the client. Even when you kind of run some of these scenarios on me, Mike, I'm sat here like, oh, this is nice. I feel looked after.
Yeah.
I feel like you're just going to show me what we have to do next. I don't have to expend energy thinking or wondering or worrying where we go next. You're just going to take me by the hand and lead me there. And that feels really like I feel nurtured.
Yeah. And that's what happens in this kind of relationship with the client. It puts them at ease that you know what you're doing. Now, if you want to have a miserable client experience, then have no process. Throw away the process. And then the client is going to say to you, they're going to start telling you what happens next. Oh, well, I got to have this by this date, and you got to do this next, and you need to do sketches for me first. They're going to start telling you what to do and managing you, because the absence of structure means that somebody's going to try and put in structure. So if you have an absence of structure in your business, then your customers and your clients are going to go and try and put structure in. And then all of a sudden, they don't feel like they should be paying you a lot of money because they start feeling like they're doing all the work. They don't feel like you're holding the boiled spud. So they're calling you every day at 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, I was just worrying about this thing. Do you even know what's coming next? When am I going to see this? They're calling you late at night. They're giving you orders. They become this manageable or this managing client nightmare, this kind of client that you hate. And this is, where some people say, oh, there's no bad clients. There's only bad designers who can't manage the clients. and that's the truth in that. The designers who don't have a system and process and educate the client in each step and take them by the hand, they are not managing the client effectively, and it is their fault that the projects are going awry.
I think there probably are some bad clients, but you can weed them out in the early discovery phase. Because if you're saying, I'm going to be leading things in this way and this is going to be the structure, and they're like, nah, that's not the right fit for me. I want to be the boss here. Well, then it's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't go forward together. Yeah. Like it's a filter. So
yeah, that's one of the vetting. I did a post a few weeks ago about vetting clients, and I have a whole lesson on it in my course, but it's if the client perceives you as the expert, then there's a much better chance that they're a good client. Or if the client sees you as a production monkey, like you're just there to push the pixels around for them.
I've been there, literally, where they're like, tweak that color, move that 2 pixels to the left, like for hours. Like they literally sit next to me and we're like, move that. Yeah.
Yep. They sit next to you. Oh, there's that funny meme that says, that has the pricing listed. And it's like, if we design your logo with no interaction with you, it's $1. If you want to sit behind us, it's $4,000. If you want to design the logo yourself, it's even more or whatever. So it's a funny perception on that the more the client wants to hold your hand and be the lead, the more money you should pay them, or you should charge them for the work. I've had it to a client who just wants to sit behind. Hey, can I come to your office? I just want to sit behind your designer for an afternoon and just work with them through the process.
It's like, no, that would be like me taking my car to a mechanic and be like, you don't mind if I just shadow you for the day and just kind of observe and comment on your work as you're fixing my car, right? It's like, who would want to work like that?
do that?
It's like Big Brother.
Yeah.
Here's another quick analogy. Imagine you go to a hotel and you walk in and you don't know who to speak to. There's no one at the front desk. There's no signs. And you're just at a complete loss. And you're like, I guess I'm going to want to do this part first, and then I'm going to figure this out. And you're just kind of shooting from the hip. You don't. You walk in, the carpet leads you right up to the front desk. Hey, how can I help you? Cool. You need to check in. Fill out this form. This person's going to get your bag. Follow them. They'll take you to the room. They're leading, and you're following in that scenario. And that doesn't mean you're passive. That doesn't mean you're losing. People like to follow. It's exhausting. Like we run our own companies. Like it's exhausting to lead all the time. Yeah. I freaking love where I go somewhere and people are like, just follow what I say. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll turn my brain off. I'll just, I'll go through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points.
And that's the empathy. Again, a lot of your clients are going to be running their own business. They don't need more decision paralysis. This is very common for business owners and CEOs. You just have to make decisions all day. It gets to the point my team asks me something and I'm like, I can't even think what the answer is to your simple question because I've just had to answer 5,000 in a row over the course of the day. Yeah. So when you go and you pay someone to do a service for you, you don't want to have to make more decisions.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, hopefully everybody got some juicy gems out of this conversation. Why don't we tennis match a few key points as we wrap this episode up? Tom, why don't you hit the first one for us?
All right. So as I just said, I think you have to lead and the client in a very nice way has to follow. So if you're dancing together, you're the lead.
Yeah. I think getting into empathy, understanding what the client's expectations are for this engagement. We mentioned a handful of those: confidence and trust and stress relief and return on investment or value. They want a good customer experience. What does the client want? You need to fulfill that.
You need to build as much into the process early on as you can, because that early foundational work is going to be what alleviates any potential headaches or stresses further down the line.
And that goes with creating detailed scope, detailed statement of work or agreement that you and the client are both on the same page, and then walking the client through your systematic step-by-step process on how you're going to execute on this project in that initial kickoff of the project, and that sets the tone for all the rest of it. Okay, my last one that I would shout out, I think, is the wait, worry, wonder. It's the make sure that they understand that you are holding the boiled spud. Make sure that they're not waiting on you, that you're not hitting a deadline. Make sure that they're not wondering what's going to happen next. It's all about educating the client and getting in their mind and doing these friendly check-ins to let them know, hey, everything's going good. This is all great. It's all going to work out. We got this boiled spud over here, and we're working it.
And my final couple of points are, the less the client has to think, the better you're managing them. And when you are managing them, do so in a human way. Don't be too all about the systems and processes. As crucial as they are, don't forget to be a friendly, approachable, fun human being that they're actually going to enjoy working with.
I love that. I love it. All right.
Such a master of voices, mate.
Oh, man, I got just impressions out the wazoo.
Got a whole lot more in the locker.
All right, dude.
That was fun. I enjoyed that one. I hope everyone else did.
It's good. Okay, so this was episode number 36 of the Biz Buds podcast, all about managing clients. We hope you got some good nuggets in this conversation. Again, thank you all for listening, and thank you for the reviews on Apple Podcasts. We love that. We love the DMs. We just love that we're finding a great audience of Biz Buddies for our show. So thank you so much for your support. Tom, why don't you take us out on a few last little adioses?
Yeah, as Mike says, we appreciate every single Biz Buddy. I can't believe this show already has more episodes than I have years on this planet. And, you know, I'm sure in many, 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 many months, we're going to hit Mike's number in terms of age.
So it's going to be happy. If I survive that long, we'll see.
But yeah, loving doing the show with Mike. We love the feedback. I've done like a bunch of projects like this before. I've never had so much feedback come back to me directly with people saying how much of a difference it's making. And that's ultimately why we do this show. So please keep reaching out. Hit us up. We love hearing from you. Keep the reviews coming in the podcast app. That again means the world. Lets more people discover the show. And otherwise, just keep on listening because we love hanging with you every week. And we will see you back here same time next week.